Last Christmas at 5 in the morning, before the world woke, before the sun dared to climb over the Colorado Ridge, I stepped out of my own home and closed the door behind me as quietly as a man being erased. Snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets, swallowing every footprint I left. By the time I reached the driveway, even the faintest trace of me had vanished, and that, ironically, was exactly what my family wanted. My name is Stephen Aldrich, 67 years old, retired internist, widower, a man who spent his entire life trying to save others only to find that the ones closest to him were quietly trying to make sure he disappeared. Since early 2024, my son Michael and his wife Vanessa had been living under my roof. At first, it felt like concern, like they wanted to be near me after Mary passed, but concern slowly shifted into monitoring. Monitoring hardened into control, and control eventually curdled into something far darker. It started small. Questions about where I kept my documents, questions about passwords, questions about end-of-life planning spoken with voices far too calm for comfort. Then came the whispers behind closed doors, the late-night conversations that died the moment I stepped into the hallway, the long glances exchanged between Michael and Vanessa when they thought I wasn't watching. And 1 month before Christmas, I saw the change in Michael's eyes. Not the look of a son, the look of someone calculating a future without me in it. Vanessa. Her smile had frozen so sharply that it could have cut through the December air. Inside my own home, I began hearing things no homeowner should ever hear. The back door unlatching at midnight. Heavy footsteps crossing the hardwood floor. Shadows drifting past the hallway light. Voices whispering words I couldn't make out but knew weren't meant for me. Something was moving inside my house. Something that did not belong to me. Something that wanted me gone. So on Christmas morning, I played my role. I put an empty suitcase in the trunk, locked the door, turned off every light, left the perfect illusion of a lonely old man fleeing the holidays. But I never left the city. I didn't even leave the neighborhood. Instead, I circled the block and slipped into the home of my neighbor, Tom Henderson, 70 years old, former police detective, 30 years on the force, and the only man I trusted to tell me the truth, even when it hurt. From the second-floor window of his house, we had a clear view straight into my kitchen, my living room, and the back entrance that no longer felt like mine. Tom handed me a cup of black coffee. His voice carried the weight of someone who had delivered too many tragic news notifications. Stephen. 3 nights. 3 nights in a row. Strangers walking into your house around 11. And none of them know you're right here. I turned toward my home. Snow blanketed the roof like a shroud, but through the frost-coated windows I saw movement slow, deliberate, familiar, in the worst possible way. Inside that house, something lived, something moved, and it wasn't me. Before I continue, I know someone is listening to this in a quiet place, maybe folding laundry driving home after a long shift or lying awake in the dark at 2 a.m., wondering why sleep refuses to come. Wherever you are, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. If this story has kept you here, go ahead and share, and subscribe. You'll want to know how this ends. I stood by Tom's upstairs window watching the quiet Christmas morning unfold. Snow drifted down in thick, heavy curtains that muffled every sound. But silence doesn't mean peace. Not for me. I thought of the house just a few yards away, the home Mary and I built, one paycheck at a time. The kitchen where she baked almond cookies every December, the living room where she laughed when the snow piled too high, the office where I stayed up late reading charts while she read on the couch beside me. That house used to be a heartbeat, warm, alive. Now it felt hollow, a shell, a stage for something I didn't yet understand. That's why I staged my disappearance. A week-long trip to visit relatives, a lie Michael accepted too easily. So quickly, in fact, that it chilled me more than the winter air. Even Vanessa tried to act concerned, asked if I needed help wrapping gifts, if I needed an Uber to the airport, if I was sure I didn't mind being alone for Christmas. Not one question about why I was leaving, not one moment of hesitation, just relief. They wanted me out of the house, badly. To complete the illusion, I hid my car in Tom's garage. Fresh snow would settle on it, telling the perfect lie, he's gone. Tom watched me with the somber stare only retired detectives have men who've seen too much in their lifetime. Stephen, are you sure you want to see this? Things people hide at night, he said softly, aren't things you want burned into your memory. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug. Tom, whatever is happening in that house, I need to know. He nodded, motioned me forward. In the small upstairs room, he'd set up a pair of old binoculars pointed directly at my backyard, a habit from his police days he never quite let go of. You need to see this, he murmured. I leaned down. Through the magnified lens, I saw every detail of my back door. The scratches, the peeling paint, the little weathered patch of wood Mary always said she'd refinish one day. Then Tom opened the footage he'd captured from his Ring camera. Vanessa appeared on screen first, pulling open the back door. Light spilled out onto the snow, carving a bright path that separated the homeowner from the intruders. A man stepped inside, dragging a large suitcase. Vanessa smiled, not the smile of a wife welcoming a guest, not the smile of family. A cold, business-like smile, a transactional smile. My chest tightened. Tom said, 3 nights in a row. 3. My throat went dry. Did they say anything? Not much, but I heard these words clearly. Rooms ready. And another time, cash only. Cash only. In 35 years as a physician, I'd seen fear, grief, panic, the rawest human emotions. But nothing froze my blood like those 2 words. Tom rested a hand on my shoulder. Stephen, this is only the beginning. A gust of wind slammed against the window like the world itself was warning me. I stared at my home lights flickering behind falling snow shadows, moving slowly inside like someone pacing, waiting, planning. That was when I realized this wasn't the beginning of Christmas. This was the beginning of the truth. A truth that would cut me open. A truth that would break me. A truth that would set me free, but only after it took everything else. And that night, standing beside Tom, watching my own home like a stranger, I made myself a promise I would not become a ghost inside the life I built. If Christmas was the day the truth finally surfaced, then late November was when the first cracks appeared. Not loud cracks, nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just the kind of quiet fractures only a man who has lived alone long enough can hear. The small shifts in air pressure, the subtle changes in people's voices, the feeling that someone has moved something half an inch to the left. And I, Stephen Aldrich, 67, had lived long enough to feel all of it. Late November 2024 in Fort Collins was cold enough that if you cracked a window, you could hear the wind clawing at the glass. Inside my house, everything looked normal, but only on the surface. One gloomy Friday afternoon, Michael sat across from me at the breakfast table. He moved his spoon in slow circles through a bowl of cereal he wasn't eating. Dad, he said, voice careful, too careful. Have you thought about putting my name on your bank accounts? You know, so I can help manage things for you. I set my teacup down. And why would that be necessary? I asked. He looked away. A tiny movement, but after decades reading micro-expressions as a physician, I caught it instantly. Well, just in case you need me to take care of something. You're getting older, Dad. That sentence hit the kitchen like a cold stone dropped into deep water. For the first time in my life, you're getting older didn't sound like concern. It sounded like groundwork. I answered slowly, deliberately. No, my accounts are fine. I can manage them myself. Michael forced a smile, but it faded almost instantly, snuffed out like a candle between 2 fingers. Behind it, I saw something flicker. Disappointment? Annoyance. Maybe both. That evening, Vanessa walked into the living room holding a small planner. Dad, I read on Healthline that seniors should get regular cognitive evaluations, memory tests and such. I think you should schedule one just to be safe. I looked at her. 2 years ago, the same woman asked me which over-the-counter medication was best for sinus congestion. Now she was recommending cognitive impairment screenings. I'm fine, Vanessa, I said, keeping my voice steady. She smiled a wide smile that never touched her eyes. I just want you to be healthy. I didn't respond. But in that moment, I felt something shift. Something cold. Then the strange things began. One morning, an email appeared, staging consultation appointment confirmed. People hire staging when they're preparing to sell a house. But this was my house, and I hadn't hired anyone. I went upstairs and examined the back door. A new security camera had been installed, the kind Airbnb hosts use. I hadn't ordered that either. I checked the front door. The lock had been replaced with a brand new smart lock. I stood in the hallway feeling my pulse slow, each beat heavier than the last. No one does these things just to make management easier. I walked into the kitchen. Michael, Vanessa, who changed the locks, who installed the camera. Michael shot a quick look at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at me with a smile that was both bright and hollow. Oh, that. We heard about some petty break-ins around the neighborhood. We just wanted to make the house safer for you. The words were right. The tone was wrong. I nodded, but inside I filed every detail away. When someone lies to you for the first time, your body remembers the exact way the air feels. Later that night, while washing dishes, I heard Michael on the phone in the living room, his voice low, tense. No, not yet. He's still paying attention. No, not yet. Not until we're sure. I turned off the faucet. If he wanted me not to hear it, he hadn't tried very hard. The signs didn't stop. They accumulated quietly, relentlessly, like layers of snow pressing down on a roof until it begins to sag. Then came the day the real shift happened. The day I realized someone outside the family was already stepping inside my private life. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in the living room reading the paper. Then I heard the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across hardwood. I looked up. A man I had never seen before stood in the entryway, a large suitcase behind him, eyes scanning the house the way someone inspects a hotel lobby. I stood. "Who are you looking for?" I asked. Michael and Vanessa both jolted like they'd been caught. Vanessa rushed forward, her smile snapping on too fast. "Oh, Dad, this is a colleague of mine. He needed a place to stay for a few days. A friend's house lost power." The man nodded awkwardly, but his eyes avoided mine, not like someone embarrassed, like someone who knew he shouldn't be there. I looked at the suitcase. It wasn't an overnight bag. It was a 4 or 5 day suitcase. Vanessa hurried him upstairs, avoiding my gaze as if afraid I'd see through her skin and touch the truth beneath it. I sat back down, but I couldn't read a single word on the newspaper page. I heard a door close upstairs, then lock. Not their bedroom. My bedroom. Mine and Mary's. Later that night, while taking out the trash, I ran into Tom. He looked at me, eyes heavy with something that wasn't weather. "Stephen," he said quietly, "there's something you need to know." He pulled me closer, lowering his voice like the whole neighborhood might be listening. "For 3 nights now, I've seen people coming into your house with luggage, not just the one today. 3 nights, same hour, same door." I froze. "Are you sure?" I asked. Tom nodded slowly. "You know my background. I don't mistake patterns." My mouth went dry. The cold bit into my lips. Tom added, "If it was 1 night, I'd ignore it. But 3 nights, same behavior, same timing. Stephen, that's not noise. That's a system." A sharp chill ran down my spine. I turned toward my house. The window of my primary bedroom was dark, but I knew someone was awake inside. My home, the place I'd lived my entire adult life, was hiding something from me. And if I didn't act soon, it would swallow me whole the same way the snow swallowed my footprints that Christmas morning. That night, as I stood in my own bedroom, I understood something terrifying. I was no longer the homeowner. I was the outsider, the one being watched, the one excluded from decisions made about his own life. And I understood something else. After these 6 weeks, Christmas would never be the same. Not ever again. There are moments in life when you think you misheard something, but your instincts tell you that you heard it perfectly. And when that instinct rises inside your own home, it is never a good sign. A few days after the man with the suitcase appeared, the atmosphere in my house tightened like a violin string about to snap. Michael and Vanessa no longer bothered to hide their stress, their exhaustion, or the constant phone calls they took on the porch, as if the walls inside the house were no longer safe for their conversations. And one night, I heard everything. Not because I was eavesdropping, but because they assumed I went to bed early. I was in my office reaching for an old medical textbook. The door cracked open just enough for their voices to slip through the hallway like a draft of Colorado winter. Michael's voice came first, tense, strained. "Vanessa, I can't even make the minimum payment this month. 8 cards. $48,000. Do you understand what that number means?" I froze. My son had never admitted something like that before. Michael, who once cared so much about appearances, now sounded like a man drowning. Vanessa snapped back. "What about me?" $72,000 in student loans plus the fines from the real estate commission for that stupid transaction. I'm on temporary license suspension. Michael, if I don't pay the penalties in 6 weeks, I lose my license. Silence. Then the sound of a glass hitting the table. Michael spoke again, quieter but heavier, like gravel being poured into a grave. No income, no clients, no refinancing approved. We are done. My hand gripped the armrest until my knuckles turned white. I had no idea things were this bad. Vanessa exhaled sharply, her voice cutting through the room like a shard of broken glass. This house, if we sell it early 2025, we'll get a great price. A long, terrible silence followed. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my chest. Michael asked, "What are you saying?" Vanessa didn't hesitate. "If your dad goes into assisted living, everything makes sense. There's nothing wrong with it. Older people need care. We're just placing him somewhere more appropriate." A coldness slid down my spine. Not the kind from weather, but the kind you feel when you realize someone has made plans for your future without including you in the conversation. I, who still drove myself everywhere, cooked my own meals, kept up with medical checkups, was being discussed like a piece of outdated furniture that no longer fit the house. Michael hesitated. "You think he'll agree to that?" Vanessa laughed, a thin sound sharp enough to cut skin. "If he doesn't, we'll handle it another way." I didn't hear what another way meant. Or maybe I didn't want to. I stepped back silently, making sure my shadow didn't fall over the stairs. I walked to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and placed my hand on Mary's wooden keepsake box. My wife had always been the first to sense when something was wrong at home. If she were still alive, she would have told me not to trust a single explanation they gave me. I closed my eyes, letting the cold wind from the window numb the burning in my chest. But it didn't help. 2 days later, the fracture widened. I was walking down the upstairs hallway when I heard a soft clicking sound from Mary's office, the room I rarely allowed anyone to enter after she died. The door was slightly open. I stepped closer. And there she was, Vanessa, standing in front of the low bookshelf that held our wedding album, Mary's handwritten letters, and the small wooden box filled with her keepsakes. Vanessa was holding it. The one item I kept as if it were a piece of Mary herself. She opened it, lifting each photograph, each little item, studying them the way people inspect drawers before staging a house for sale. I stood in the doorway. "What are you doing in this room?" My voice was low, cold, barely masking the fury beneath it. Vanessa startled, then quickly plastered on that familiar polished smile, the one that only looked warm to people who didn't know better. "Oh, Dad, I'm just tidying up a little. It's the holiday season and we might have guests. I wanted the house to look neat." I stepped further inside, my eyes fixed on the box in her hands. "This is Mary's room," I said slowly, each word sharp and deliberate. "No one comes in here without my permission." She set the box down, forcing another smile to soften the tension. "I'm sorry if that bothered you. But you know how big the house is. I just want everything to look organized." I looked straight into her eyes. There are moments in life when you realize the person standing in front of you doesn't see you as a father-in-law or family or even a person, just an obstacle. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply closed the door behind me. But that night I picked up my phone and activated the recording feature. Not because I wanted to accuse anyone, but because I knew if I didn't keep evidence, there might come a day when they would make sure I couldn't speak the truth at all. From that night forward, every important conversation, every strange detail, every whisper out of place, I recorded. I am not a detective. I am just a widower, a father who thought he understood his family, and a man starting to realize his own home was no longer safe. The first fractures had appeared, but I didn't yet know that within a few weeks the entire house would split open and reveal the truth about the people I once trusted most. There are nights when you feel the world staring straight at you, not because you've done something wrong, but because you're about to uncover something that will change the way you see your own life forever. On a late November night, standing on Tom Henderson's porch, I understood one thing clearly. When the truth shows up at 11 p.m., it never wears a gentle face. Tom opened the door and let me in. His house always smelled faintly of old wood and overbrewed coffee, the scent of someone who has lived more than he's spoken. "Stephen, you need to see this tonight," he said, skipping the small talk. I followed him into his small office where 3 monitors glowed with feeds from his security system. A man who spent 30 years as a detective doesn't live without cameras. It's a habit of survival, and on that night, I was grateful for it. Tom rewound the Ring camera recording mounted on his back fence. The screen lit up, casting a harsh, surgical glow across my aging face. 11:03 p.m. 3 nights ago, Tom said. The footage played light snow drifting down like glass dust. My back door opening from the inside. Vanessa stepping out, no coat, no hesitation, like she was following a perfectly timed schedule. Then came a man I had never seen, 30, maybe 35, dragging a large suitcase, eyes darting around as though terrified of being noticed. My hand tightened around the edge of the chair. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, her voice barely above a whisper, just loud enough for the Ring camera to catch this way. Keep it quiet, the homeowner is away. Away. The way she said it didn't mean he's visiting relatives. It meant he doesn't matter. Tom paused the footage. That was the first night I saw someone come in, he said. At first I thought it might be someone you knew, but no one shows up with luggage at nearly midnight. I didn't answer. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure my voice would hold. Tom continued. The next clip played. 11:04 p.m. The following night. Vanessa again. Another stranger. Another suitcase. The same receptionist smile, a smile I had never seen her use with family. Follow me. Bedroom is upstairs. The man walked up the stairs without hesitation, as if he'd been told exactly where to go, and I knew where he was headed, the primary bedroom, mine and Mary's. My heart pounded like heavy boots striking concrete. Tom fast-forwarded to night 3. The same routine, the same timing, the same behavior. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't someone helping a friend. This wasn't a colleague staying for a night. This was an illegal Airbnb operation run by my daughter-in-law inside the house I spent 30 years building. I inhaled slowly, trying to hold the cold rage crawling up my spine. Stephen, Tom said quietly, "That's not the worst part." He opened another tab, a scanned letter from the HOA. "You ever see this?" he asked. "Never," I said. "It was dropped off at your house last week. A warning about unfamiliar cars parked overnight. If you don't respond, they'll fine you." I had never ignored an HOA notice in my life. In this neighborhood, the HOA will fine you if your trash can stays out 2 hours too long. Tom slid a photocopy across the desk. "They delivered it to your house, but nobody accepted it, so they emailed it too." I opened my phone, inbox nothing, spam empty, trash clean. I logged into the HOA portal, my blood ran cold. "Your HOA notifications are currently disabled." I clicked activity log. A small line of text hit me like a slap. Notification settings updated by user Vanessa Aldrich. Date 09/14/2024, 2:17 p.m. The room shifted around me. She had turned off every HOA alert. Made sure I wouldn't know anything about violations, about complaints, about suspicious cars, about anything that might expose what she was doing. Tom added, "I checked my camera from the week you were gone. A strange car stayed parked at your driveway for 2 full days. Might have been a long-term renter." Something hollow opened in my chest. 2 days, a long Airbnb stay, in my house, while I was still living there just unknowingly. My hands shook as I opened the shared family calendar, the one Michael and Vanessa insisted on managing for me. HOA alerts were marked as hidden, not a glitch, not a mistake, a deliberate act. I scrolled through shared events. One faint line appeared as if someone had tried to hide it. Staging walkthrough, 11:28 p.m. I pointed at it. "What is this?" Tom stared at it for a few seconds before answering. "They're preparing to sell your house, Stephen." Air left my lungs, like someone had punched through my ribs. "That's impossible," I said. "I haven't signed anything. This is my home." Tom interrupted gently. "Stephen, I've seen hundreds of property disputes. When people start staging, the planning began long before that. You're just the last one to find out." I braced my hands on the table, staring at that faint line on the calendar. My heart didn't beat normally anymore. It thrashed, trying to warn me of something my mind still refused to accept. I stood and walked to the window. From Tom's second floor, I had a perfect view of my home. The primary bedroom window was dark, but I knew someone was in there. The furniture I bought, the bed Mary and I chose together, her photo frames, our memories, all being disturbed by strangers' hands. The wind whipped across the yard, scattering snow into glitter under the streetlight. It was a beautiful sight if it hadn't been happening to a house being exploited right under its owner's nose. Tom stood behind me. "Stephen," he said softly, "you want to stop? You don't have to keep watching this. It's a lot. I need to know." I said, my voice breaking but firm. "I can't live blind in my own home." Tom nodded. He pulled another HOA letter from his desk, a reminder about security compliance. "Sent 2 days ago. If they detect violations, they may conduct an on-site inspection soon." I tightened my grip on the letter. Vanessa knew the HOA rules. She also knew that if the HOA discovered an illegal Airbnb, they'd fine her heavily, maybe even conduct a full property review. And that's why she blocked everything. So I wouldn't know, so I wouldn't respond, so I wouldn't interfere. My home had become her income source. And me, the man who paid for every brick, I had become nothing more than a signature on paper, a ghost with a mortgage. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. "Tom," I said, "from now on, I want to see everything. Every video, every HOA warning, every movement by that back door." Tom placed a hand on my shoulder, firm, steady, the kind of gesture only people who have spent their lives saving others can do right. "Stephen," he said, "you're not suspicious anymore. You're being pushed out of your own life." His words hung heavy in the room, cold, final, like a verdict. I looked one last time toward my back door. No one was stepping out. No one was stepping in. But I could feel something. A presence. A quiet, predatory movement like a wild animal waiting in the dark. I didn't know how I would handle it, but I knew one thing. That night wasn't just a sign, it was a warning, and if I didn't answer it, I would lose everything. Some phone calls seem harmless until they open a door you never wanted to walk through. For me, that call came on a cold December morning, and it made me realize that the betrayal inside my home had already gone much further than midnight Airbnb guests sneaking up my stairs. December 3rd, 2024. Fresh snow coated the roof like white fireglass under the weak winter sun. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A text from the bank. "Your refinance inquiry is being processed." Reply: "Yes to confirm appointment for document review." Refinance. I froze. I hadn't refinanced my house. I hadn't asked for anything. I hadn't scheduled an appointment. I had no reason to. I typed no. But a single question stabbed straight through my mind. Who did this? Michael, Vanessa? Or someone using my name? I grabbed my coat and keys and drove to the bank immediately. Wells Fargo on College Avenue had always been a safe place for me. Mary and I handled every important financial matter there. But that morning, walking into the building felt wrong, heavy, unsettling, like stepping into a place where my past was being rewritten without my consent. Harold Thompson, my longtime loan officer. A gentle, soft-spoken man in his mid-50s with glasses that always slid down his nose walked up to me. "Stephen, I thought you weren't coming today." "Because I never made an appointment, Harold," I said. His eyes widened. "But this is your number, isn't it?" He held up his screen. It was my number, but I hadn't submitted anything. Harold motioned me into a private room, the kind where difficult conversations happen between polite people. He opened his laptop, typed a few commands, and turned the screen toward me. "This is the refinance application you submitted 10 days ago." I stared at the document. My name, Stephen Aldrich. My address, my mortgage account number. Every detail was correct, except the signature. It looked like mine, but it wasn't mine. I studied the curve, the hooks, the slight slant of the D. Whoever forged it knew me well, knew the way I signed from years of medical charts, knew my rightward tilt, knew the exact pressure I usually used. But the stroke, the speed, the hesitation, that wasn't me. Harold's voice dropped the way a doctor talks when giving bad news gently. "Stephen, if you didn't submit this, someone used the old copies of your ID tax returns and bank statements you filed with us a few years ago." I went still. A tight, crushing band wrapped around my chest. Only 3 people had seen those documents. Me, Harold, and Michael. He once helped me scan everything. He once held the original folder. He once said, "Dad, let me save these on my computer." It's safer that way. Safer. Harold continued. I can't accuse anyone, but this application has red flags. The applicant refused an in-person meeting. They requested remote submission. That violates policy. I swallowed bitterness so thick it burned. Harold turned the screen back to himself. I've frozen the file for now, but Stephen, you should review all your accounts and be careful with old paperwork. I nodded slowly. When I stood to leave, Harold called out, Stephen, one more thing. As a friend, I turned. Don't sign anything Michael gives you, not even a plumbing form. I couldn't speak. I simply nodded and walked out. Cold air hit my face like needles sharp, penetrating, brutally clarifying. I meant to drive home, but instead my hands turned the wheel toward the county court building, the place I visited after Mary died to settle her estate. The moment I stepped inside the lobby, a familiar voice called my name. Stephen. Is that really you, Emily Parker? A 32-year-old paralegal who had helped me navigate Mary's inheritance documents. Smart, quick, kind eyes, hair always tied in a neat bun. Are you doing well? I heard you're living with your son now, she said. I forced a small smile, trying to. She studied my expression as if sensing the truth behind the half answer. Then she said the sentence that lifted the ground out from beneath my feet. By the way, someone was here last week asking about emergency guardianship. I'm pretty sure they mentioned your name. I froze. Guardianship. Emergency guardianship. The legal process used when someone is declared mentally incompetent. When the court decides a person can't manage their own life. When control is handed to someone else. Under guardianship, family can take your house, take your bank accounts, take your medical decisions, put you in a nursing home, sell your assets for your care. Emily lowered her voice. I'm not sure it was your family, but I thought you should know. Are you okay? I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was trying to keep my knees from giving out. Michael suggesting shared bank accounts. Vanessa insisting I needed a cognitive exam. The staging consultation. The hidden HOA alerts. The Airbnb guests. The forged refinance signature. All the scattered pieces were suddenly fitting together. Emily watched my face carefully, then whispered, If you need a lawyer, I can recommend someone trustworthy. I thanked her and walked out. But when my hand touched the door, I noticed it was trembling. Not from fear, not from the cold, from realization. They didn't just want my house. They didn't just want my money. They wanted me declared incompetent. They wanted control. They wanted silence. They wanted me gone legally. Driving back through Fort Collins, the snow looked peaceful like a white blanket over a sleeping town. But inside me, nothing was quiet anymore. I walked through the front door. Michael looked up from the TV, Vanessa from her laptop. They smiled, greeted me, acted normal. But now behind every smile, I saw sharp teeth. Behind every concerned word, I heard the scratch of a pen forging my signature. Behind their footsteps, I heard luggage wheels rolling across my hardwood floor. I went to my room and closed the door softly, then leaned against it, letting the weight of the truth settle into my bones. They were building something, a plan, a coordinated operation. They thought I didn't know. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought I was old, confused, easy to steer. But they forgot something I spent 40 years as an internist. I read symptoms from a blink. I read lies in the rhythm of a breath. I read intentions in the silence before a sentence. I walked to my desk and placed my hand on Mary's wooden keepsake box. Mary, I whispered. They're trying to erase me from my own life. Outside, snow kept falling. But inside me, something was rising, something I thought had died with Mary. The will to survive, the will to fight back, the will to choose my own ending. I opened the scanned refinance file Harold had emailed me. At the bottom, next to the forged signature, was a note attached to guardianship packet, pending. I stared at it. Each letter felt like a needle in my skin. Guardianship packet. They had started. Not planning, but executing. And for the first time in my life, I understood the battle between me and my own family had officially begun. Some wounds never turn into scars. They don't bleed. They don't bruise. No one notices them. but they gnaw at the mind, the way a tiny crack echoes through an empty house, quiet enough to make you doubt yourself, loud enough to keep you awake at night. And in the middle of that December, I began to feel those wounds. After leaving the bank and the county court and hearing the word guardianship tied to my name, I returned home with the strange realization that nothing inside my own house felt like it belonged to me anymore. I walked straight to Mary's study, the room I always entered when the world felt too heavy. When I pushed the door open, something on the floor caught my eye. A Christmas ornament. Mary's ornament. A blown glass piece we had bought together in Estes Park during our last winter trip before she passed. It was shattered 3 large pieces and dozens of tiny shards glittering like broken ice across the wood floor. I knelt down slowly, picking up the fragments with trembling fingers. No one in this house had any reason to touch that ornament. It had always sat on the highest shelf where only I reached for it once a year. I stood up, my chest tightening as I looked around. The drawer on Mary's desk was cracked open. One photo album had been pulled out of the line. A Christmas card from 1994, her handwriting still crisp and warm, lay face down on the rug. Small things, insignificant to anyone else, but to someone who had lived here more than 3 decades, they were alarm bells. I closed my eyes. Cold air seeped into my lungs. Mary used to say, "Houses can't talk, Stephen, but they know how to call for help." That room was calling, and I heard it. Later that evening, I stepped out to the backyard where Tom was repairing the outdoor pipe between our fences, something he always did for me when winter turned unforgiving. He stood, brushed snow from his gloves, and watched me for a long moment. "Stephen, there's something I need to tell you." I waited. Last week when I came over to fix the pipe at your place, I saw a man walk out the back door. I swallowed. Another Airbnb guest. Tom nodded slowly. But it wasn't Vanessa who let him out. "Your bedroom door was open upstairs. I saw him come from your room, Stephen." I froze. "My room." My voice cracked, raw paper thin. Tom pulled off his knit cap, rubbing the fabric between his fingers. "Yes, I assumed you knew him. Thought he was family or a friend. But now, I know he wasn't." The air was cold, but somehow the breath inside my chest turned colder. A stranger had walked out of my bedroom. The room I had kept untouched since Mary died. The room with her keepsakes, her letters, her journals, our life in boxes and frames. That room had never been meant for anyone else, especially not a paying guest. I felt anger rise inside me, not fiery, not explosive, but frozen. A deep numbing cold that spread like frost along my bones. That night, I didn't go straight to bed. I stood at my bedroom door listening. The house was still except for the low hum of the heater downstairs. I opened the door. The warm amber light I always left on Mary's light looked different, not placed the way I left it, turned on and off by hands that weren't mine. I walked back to the kitchen and opened a drawer only doctors or medical techs would think to open. Inside was a mini motion sensor, a discreet tool used in hospitals to detect unauthorized access to cabinets or med carts. I attached it quietly to my bedroom door. If something was moving through my home, I needed proof. I went to bed. At 3 a.m., I woke not to a sound but to a notification ping on my phone. 3 alerts. Door opened, 2:17 a.m. Door opened, 2:41 a.m. Door opened, 2:58 a.m. 3 times. In less than an hour. I didn't move, didn't open the door, didn't breathe. I just sat upright on the edge of the bed, eyes open in the dark, feeling the truth settle on my skin like snow. Someone had entered my room. 3 times. That wasn't the wind. That wasn't the house settling. And it sure as hell wasn't an accident. I didn't sleep again. I stayed there still silent and very, very awake until dawn began seeping into the edges of the dresser. In the kitchen later that morning, Vanessa sat with her laptop open, typing with the bright, energetic smile of someone working toward a goal no one else in the room knows about. "You're up early, Dad," she said. I didn't answer. My eyes drifted toward her screen. A PDF was open. She closed it quickly, but not before I caught the title in the corner. Pre-listing Staging Checklist. Holiday Season. My grip tightened around the coffee pot until it rattled. I waited 10 minutes until I heard her walk upstairs and shut her bedroom door. Then I opened my own laptop. Our old home printer automatically kept digital copies of the last PDFs printed from the network. There was one file. I clicked it and froze. Page 1 displayed a professional staging checklist, the kind used before listing a home for sale. Not surprising for someone in real estate. But then I saw the line that made my pulse drop. Remove emotional belongings of former owner by 12/20. Former owner, former owner. Even in their planning documents, they had already erased me. My throat tightened. My hands shook. Mary and I spent 30 years building this home. Every curtain fold, every chair, every photograph, pieces of a life we lived together. And Vanessa reduced it all to emotional belongings of the former owner, with a deadline to clear them out. I folded the paper, my breath unsteady. There was no room for doubt anymore. They weren't just renting the house behind my back. They weren't just preparing to sell it. They weren't just forging refinance papers. They weren't just planning guardianship. They were preparing to erase me, erase my history, erase 30 years with Mary, erase the man I had been. The wounds I felt weren't physical. They lived deeper in memory, in trust, in the parts of a heart that bruise without ever showing a mark. I folded the checklist one more time and whispered to myself, slow, steady, resolute. If they want to erase me, I'll leave marks they'll remember for the rest of their lives. In medicine, there are diagnoses you don't need machines for. Sometimes the symptoms appear all at once and you just know your patient is facing something far more dangerous than they realize. My life in early December 2024 was exactly like that. All those scattered symptoms from the past weeks, the strangers in my house, the replaced locks, the secret staging appointments, the forged refinance papers, the whispers about cognitive decline, the quiet inquiries about guardianship, they finally began snapping together like bones, forming a complete skeleton. And the moment I saw the whole picture, I knew time was no longer on my side. That afternoon, Michael left his laptop on the kitchen counter. It was almost unthinkable. Michael guarded that laptop more than his own wallet, as if the secrets inside it were more valuable than the roof over his head. But today, he must have rushed outside to take a call or panicked about something he didn't want me to hear. The laptop sat open screen, sleeping lightly. I stood at the sink pretending to rinse a teapot. In my chest, every instinct warred with my conscience. A father shouldn't go through his son's personal things, but a son shouldn't betray his father either. And Michael had already crossed that line long before I ever touched that laptop. I dried my hands. Then I opened the lid. The screen woke immediately. I felt the air leave my lungs when I saw the first email inbox. Estate Attorney Mark Langford. Subject finalization of transfer package, 12/27. Submission transfer package. My name in the subject line. December 27th. My hands numbed. I clicked. The email was crisp, professional, emotionless. Michael, as discussed, the transfer package will be completed by 12/27. I am only waiting on Mr. Aldrich's cognitive status confirmation and the finalized power of attorney. Once both documents are secured, we will proceed with the petition immediately. ML cognitive status, power of attorney, transfer of ownership. I scrolled down. Attached was a folder. I opened it. Inside were draft power of attorney, my name already typed on the signature line. Guardianship petition template, 60% pre-filled. A medical checklist of my health labeled recent cognitive issues, reported by family. A chill slid down my spine like I had leaned against a slab of ice. This wasn't a plan. This wasn't a maybe. This wasn't even early preparation. They were in the final stages. And the date, December 27th. 2 days after Christmas, the same day as the forged refinance inquiry. I tasted bitterness at the back of my throat. I kept scrolling. Another email flagged. Important. Michael, scheduling your father's cognitive test is essential. Without a diagnosis, guardianship cannot proceed. V. Booked the appointment for 12/27. ML. My fingers trembled slightly over the trackpad. They weren't even hiding it. Not in their messages to each other. Not in their files. Not in their schedule. Everything I feared had now appeared in writing on a date in legal templates with instructions. The betrayal wasn't theoretical anymore. It was documented. As I shut the laptop, I heard the front door open. Michael walked in, grabbed a soda from the fridge, didn't sense a thing. But I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of stress-fear calculation. Pressure was squeezing him from all sides, and he intended to relieve that pressure by crushing me with it. Trying to sound casual, I asked, "Where are you heading, son?" Michael forced a smile. "Just meeting a friend, Dad. Call if you need anything." I nodded. But when he turned away, I knew the truth. A man only forces a smile like that when he has far too much to hide. An hour later, while I sat in Mary's study trying to slow the pounding in my chest, my phone rang. Dr. Ravi Patel, my colleague, my friend, a physician I trusted for over 15 years, I answered. "Ravi." "Everything all right?" His voice wavered slightly. "Stephen, I need to confirm something. Vanessa contacted me. She said your family requested a cognitive assessment for you on December 27th. My jaw tightened. She said, "Family requested it." "Yes," Ravi replied. "She mentioned memory concerns." "But Stephen, when I spoke to you months ago, you were perfectly clear. Nothing suggested cognitive decline." I exhaled slowly. "Ravi, I never requested any evaluation, and I certainly did not consent." He was silent for several seconds. Silence from a doctor is never random. It is deliberate, measured, a warning. "Stephen," he said softly, "be careful. When family requests cognitive testing for guardianship purposes, things can escalate very, very quickly." I could not speak, not because I lacked words, but because my voice no longer felt steady enough to hold them. When I finally hung up, I sat there staring at Mary's photograph across the room, her gentle smile, her eyes that always saw more than I could. I heard her voice in memory. "Stephen, betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the ones you once sheltered from the rain." Those words lodged themselves like a blade beneath my ribs. I walked downstairs, opened my own laptop, logged into the hospital system where I still had a doctor's account. The appointment was there. Cognitive test patient Stephen Aldrich, date 12/27/2024, requested by family concern. A diagnosis, a guardianship petition, a transfer package, a forged refinance, hidden HOA alerts, Airbnb guests in my bedroom. Mary's belongings touched, moved, broken. Locks replaced, emails deleted, staging deadlines set. Everything, every little piece that made no sense on its own was suddenly a complete picture. Their plan was simple. Step 1, create the narrative that I was losing my memory. Step 2, force a cognitive test for evidence. Step 3, file the guardianship petition. Step 4, take control of my home and finances. Step 5, sell the house early 2025. Step 6, place me in assisted living for my own good. Legally, cleanly, quietly. And the execution date, December 27th, 2 days after Christmas, the day they assumed I'd be most alone, most vulnerable, most willing to surrender. I closed the laptop and whispered into the dim room, "No, not this time. Not with me. And certainly not like this." There are moments in life that hit the heart like a violent jolt, moments you recognize instantly because you know nothing after them will ever look the same. Christmas night 2024 was that moment for me. Snow had fallen since morning, blanketing every roof on Riverbend Court in a peaceful white. Warm porch lights glowed, wreaths hung on front doors, and families gathered around fireplaces unwrapping gifts. But I sat in the dark. Tom Henderson's upstairs study was lit only by a small desk lamp, just bright enough for him to monitor the screens, but dim enough to keep us invisible from the street. Tom stood by the window, arms folded. I sat near the wall, eyes fixed on the home I had lived in for more than 30 years. Christmas, a day that used to belong to Mary and me, had become the night I watched my own home the way detectives watch crime scenes. Tom glanced at his watch. 11:06, he whispered. "If they're keeping their schedule, we'll see someone soon." I swallowed the heat rising in my throat. For weeks, everything had been fragments. A strange noise there, a missing letter here, a signature that wasn't mine. A room rearranged, a file left open on a laptop. But since the moment I left the house at dawn, pretending to disappear, I knew tonight would expose everything. And at 11:08, the back porch light of my home flicked on. Tom zoomed in the camera. The ring feed lit up the snow-covered yard behind my house. A white SUV pulled into the side driveway. A young couple stepped out, dragging 2 large suitcases, travelers fresh off a late-night flight. The man looked around as if afraid of being caught. Then Vanessa stepped into the frame. I held my breath. She wore a cashmere cardigan, hair tied neatly, light makeup on, but her smile was sharp enough to cut through bone. It was a realtor's smile, a salesperson's smile, a smile for closing deals. Tom muttered under his breath, "Good Lord." She even dressed like a hotel receptionist. Vanessa opened the back door and leaned in just enough for the ring camera to catch her voice. "Welcome! Come on in!" "Sorry, we're using the back entrance. The homeowner is very strict about security." The homeowner. Me. Strict about security. My hands tightened until my knuckles cracked. The couple rolled their suitcases across the hardwood floor, a sound that used to warm my heart when Mary came home from trips. Now it made something inside me want to break. Vanessa gave the couple a polished tour, pointing through the kitchen like she'd rehearsed her lines. "Upstairs you'll find 3 rooms. 2 are already occupied. Yours is the master suite, largest room, private bath." Tom's head turned toward me. "The master is your room, right?" All I could do was nod. My throat closed up. They were renting out my bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where Mary slept beside me every night for 3 decades. Vanessa's voice drifted through the hallway, captured clearly by the ring mic. "The homeowner moved to assisted living, so the house is empty. Make yourselves at home." Assisted living. Those 2 words detonated inside my chest. There was no ambiguity, no misunderstanding, no accidental phrasing. She told total strangers that I, alive, breathing, sitting right here, had been moved out of my own home, as if I were a piece of old furniture finally cleared out of the way. A cold shiver crawled across my back. Tom whispered, "You heard her, Stephen. They're spreading a story that you don't live there anymore." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The couple wandered into my living room. Vanessa poured them water, gesturing with pride. "This is the common area. Wi-Fi passwords on the table. Make yourselves comfortable. The man said I heard the place might be sold early next year. The new owner told us the old guy moved out." I nearly stood up. Tom's hand pressed onto my shoulder. "Sit. Don't let emotion cloud what you're seeing." On screen, Vanessa gave the kind of thin, practiced smile that only people who lie for money perfect. "Yes. Paperwork's almost done. Just a few steps left." Paperwork. Cognitive test on 12/27. Guardianship petition. Refinance attempt. Staging checklist. Deleted HOA alerts. Broken ornaments. Strangers in my bed. One long spine of organized betrayal. Then Vanessa led them toward another room. "And here's the workspace, our home office suite." Home office. But as Tom zoomed in, I already knew. She opened the door to my study, the place where Mary's photo used to sit, where I kept medical journals, where I wrote letters to Michael over the years, letters he probably never read. The lights flicked on. My desk, once cluttered with my life, was spotless. No papers, no photo, no pen. Mary gave me the year before she died, completely sanitized. She had followed the staging checklist perfectly. Remove emotional belongings of previous owner before 12/20. Previous owner. That phrase felt like a blade. Tom exhaled hard. "Stephen, this isn't suspicion anymore. This is coordinated, planned, timed." I looked at my home, its warm lights glowing through the windows, soft gold on fresh snow. On Christmas night, every house on the block was filled with laughter gifts children hope, except mine. Mine was filled with suitcase wheels, rental guests, and the sound of Vanessa selling off pieces of my life. I rose from my chair. Silent. Heavy. I walked to the window so close my breath fogged the glass. "They think I'm gone," I whispered. Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. I continued. "If they think I'm gone, this is when they let everything slip. Tonight they won't hold back. Tonight, the raw truth comes out." Tom asked quietly, "What are you planning to do?" "Nothing," I said. "Not tonight. But I'll watch, I'll listen, and I'll let them expose themselves." Across the street, Vanessa laughed softly with the renters. Somewhere inside, Michael was either asleep or pretending to be letting her do all the dirty work first. And I stood in the dark, the last conscious witness to a family rotting from the inside out. Then Vanessa stepped back into the hallway, checking to make sure Michael wasn't around. She whispered to the guests, "The homeowner doesn't live here anymore. Just treat the place like it's yours." In that instant, something in me broke, not a bone, not the heart, but something deeper. The last thread of trust I had held for my own son. I looked at Tom. Tom looked at me. We didn't speak, because sometimes truth doesn't need words. It just needs a night cold enough to reveal everything. There are truths that never live in the light. They hide in shadows, in the cold corners of a backyard, where people stash away the things they pray no one will ever find. And at 1 a.m. on the night between December 25th and 26th, I stepped into that darkness and finally saw everything they had been doing behind my back. From Tom Henderson's upstairs window, I watched until every light on my first floor went out. The Airbnb guests had gone to their room. Vanessa had disappeared upstairs. Michael, like always, claimed he was exhausted, even though he had no job to be exhausted from. Tom checked his watch. 1:03 a.m., he whispered. If you're going to enter your yard, this is the safest time. I nodded, pulled on my coat, and lowered the brim of my hat. The snow had thickened, erasing my steps as fast as I made them, a fact I silently thanked God for. I crossed Tom's backyard, then slipped along the wooden fence Mary used to line with Christmas lights every year. There were no lights this year. Now I understood why. When I stepped into my own backyard, a strange ache rippled through my chest. This was the yard where Mary and I grilled steaks every July, where Michael used to chase snowflakes as a child, where family meant something. Now it looked like someone else's property. Strange footprints, strange tire marks, strangers' cigarette butts. Nothing carried the scent of family anymore. I walked to the shed, the old oak one Mary and I built together in 1999. Every nail in that wood was a memory. The lock was shut. But Tom had prepared for this. Before I left home on Christmas morning, he used his old detective skills to duplicate my shed key just in case, he'd said. I slid the key into the lock. A soft click broke the silence. Small, but loud enough to send my pulse racing. I stepped inside. Cold air sliced across my face. The smell of old wood mingled with damp paper, but that wasn't what made my skin crawl. It was the sight in front of me. This was no longer the cluttered storage shed where I kept tools and mementos. It had become their secret document room. Right in the center on the work table lay a navy blue folder. I opened it. The very first page hit me like a cinder block purchase and sale agreement. Draft buyer, Daniel Brooks, listing agent Vanessa Aldrich. The world around me stopped. A contract. A buyer. A price. A date. My house was already sold. The price, $195 million, closing date, 12/31/2024. Transfer of ownership, 05/2025, December 31st. My feet turned to ice. They weren't preparing to sell the house. They had already sold it, and the transfer was scheduled in less than 1 week. I flipped the page. There was a clause: the current homeowner must not be residing in the property at the time of signature. Not residing. That was meant for me. Next to the contract was a small notebook. I opened it. Each page was filled with neat, systematic entries. Airbnb. Weekly cash intake. Week 1, $480. Week 2, $535. Week 3, $560. Week 4, $510. Week 5, $620. Names of guests, dates, cash amounts, instructions. Use back door. Don't enter living room. Key inside black box. This wasn't side income. This wasn't a one-time favor. This was an illegal rental business running inside my home. I turned another page. One line written in red. Stop taking guests after 12/28. Prepare for handover. 12/31. A cold wave crawled up my spine. They weren't waiting for the right moment. They had timed every step. I opened another stack of files inside a yellow folder. The first page read USDA, guardianship packet prepared but not filed. My hands trembled as I flipped through it. Inside were a guardianship petition, 70% completed, a checklist of my medical records, a recommendation to place me in assisted living, a list of my assets including Mary's savings. I had to stop for a moment just to breathe, not out of fear, but because anger, a frozen, silent kind of anger, was climbing its way through my chest. At the last page was a handwritten note. Wait for cognitive test results. 12/27. File guardianship within 48 hours. My heart dropped into a hollow space inside me. They had calculated the timing down to the hour. I kept searching. At the bottom of a cardboard box, I found a blank white envelope. No name, no label. Inside was a printed draft of a medical cognitive evaluation. Diagnosis: mild cognitive impairment. Suspected. Reason: reported by family forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty with daily tasks. There was no doctor's signature, but the assigned physician field read Dr. Ravi Patel. Ravi would never write this. Never. Someone must have accessed the system using my saved logins. Vanessa had helped me organize my medical files months earlier. I looked at the corner of the draft. Metadata. Last edited by Vanessa Aldrich. Timestamp 12/10/2024, 4:12 p.m. That was it. No more doubt. No more excuses. No more hoping I was wrong. Vanessa didn't just want me in assisted living. She wanted the paperwork to say I belonged there. I gathered everything: the sales contract, Airbnb ledger, guardianship forms, medical draft. Then my eyes landed back on the sales agreement. At the bottom, closing deadline, 12/31/2024, transfer of ownership must begin no later than this date. They didn't just choose a day. They chose New Year's Eve. When offices are closed, people are distracted, and no one checks legal filings. If I disappeared that day, no one would notice. No one would question anything. I stared at the date until the numbers burned into my vision. December 31st, 6 days away. 6 days until they erased my life, cleanly, quietly, legally. I stood in the icy shed wind, slipping through the board snow, tapping on the roof like a warning. And I whispered, slow, low, and certain, fine. If they chose December 31st to end me, I'll choose December 26th to begin ending them. The morning of December 26, 2024 began with a strange kind of silence. The silence of a house that has no idea it's about to be exposed. Last night, after sending every Ring video and every Airbnb log to City Code Enforcement, Tom had told me, someone's going to knock tomorrow morning, and they won't knock politely. He was right. From behind Tom's backyard fence, I watched my own house glowing warmly, as if nothing in the world was wrong. The snow from last night lay thick on the front steps, covering any sign of the strangers who had come and gone. But truth is never covered for long. At 9:03 a.m., Tom tapped my shoulder. They're here. A City Code Enforcement vehicle rolled into my driveway. Right behind it, a black SUV from the HOA. 2 officials stepped out, bundled in winter coats, clipboards in hand. People who don't come to talk. They come to document. They marched to my front door and knocked hard. Thud, thud, thud. The sound cracked through the cold morning like a verdict. The living room curtain twitched. Vanessa appeared at the door. For half a second, her face blanched white. Then she put on her real estate agent smile, the one she saves for difficult clients. Good morning. How can I help you? The city inspector didn't waste a breath. We received reports of unlicensed rental activity at this address. We need to conduct a property inspection immediately. Kara, the HOA representative, stepped forward with documents. And the HOA has 3 unanswered notices: unauthorized parking and improper use of community property. Vanessa's face went from white to red and back to white again. Oh, there must be some misunderstanding. We're not renting the house. We just had a few friends visiting. The inspector cut her off mid-breath. We will inspect the lower-level sleeping areas and fire safety zones per Fort Collins regulations, and any explanation you give will be added to the report. Tom exhaled a small, satisfied breath beside me. They're not messing around, he whispered. I didn't answer. I just watched. Waited. This was the moment I'd been preparing for all month. Inside the house, the inspector entered first. Vanessa followed him with the brittle poise of someone trying to salvage a sinking deal. Michael stumbled down the stairs, sleep still on his face, clearly unaware of last night's events. What's going on? He asked. Inspection, Vanessa muttered, her voice tight as piano wire. Michael scanned the officials, then glanced toward the door. Perhaps he was looking for me. Perhaps he thought I was away for the holidays. He didn't know I was behind 2 fences watching every second. They moved through the house. The inspector flipped on lights, checked corners. This fire extinguisher expired in 2018. 6 years. Vanessa gave a tight, shaky smile. Oh, we must have just forgotten. You cannot forget, he said sharply. Rental properties require working fire safety equipment. This is a Class 2 violation. Michael jumped in. This house isn't for rent. We aren't. A voice echoed from the hallway. Are you the owner who listed the place? Everyone turned. One of the Airbnb guests stepped out still in pajamas, hair messy, holding a mug of coffee likely made by Vanessa as part of her service. The guest continued. Your wife told us the owner moved into assisted living, so we'd have the whole house to ourselves. Silence. A deep, suffocating silence. I swear I could hear Vanessa's heart hit the floor. The inspector clicked his pen against his clipboard. Confirmation from the renters. Cash payment correct. The guest nodded. Yep, $150 a night. She said not to use the app, something about taxes. Michael turned to Vanessa, his face draining of blood. What did you do? I only meant... The inspector lifted his hand. No explanations required. I'll be reporting that the legal homeowner was absent. The property was used as an unregistered lodging facility, and guests were placed in a room without proper fire egress. Vanessa stammered. This house is just so big. I was only trying the HOA rep cut in coldly is not an excuse for violating regulations. Vanessa looked at Michael desperate, but Michael avoided her eyes for the first time, realizing things had spun far beyond their control. And right then, the moment everything was collapsing around them, I stepped in. I walked through the back door using the same old key I'd had for 30 years. The sound of the lock turning made the entire room freeze. Vanessa's face drained to chalk. Michael's lips parted in disbelief. The Airbnb guests stared. The inspector raised an eyebrow. The HOA rep nodded slowly as if all the missing pieces had just clicked into place. I stepped fully inside, removed my hat, and looked at Michael and Vanessa. Not angrily, not loudly. Just a deep, hollow stare, the stare of a father watching his own children dig his grave. Vanessa spoke first, her voice shaking. "Dad, when did you come back? You thought I was gone." My voice was low. Calm. Deadly calm. Michael stepped forward. "Dad, we can explain." I held up a hand. "Explain why my house became a hotel." My words fell into the room like hammer strikes. Vanessa tried again. "Dad, I only did this because the house is big. And the bills, I just wanted to help." I cut her off. "Help by letting strangers sleep in my bedroom, by taking cash under the table, by telling people I'd moved into assisted living." Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed again. Michael inched closer. "Dad, we were only no." I held up my hand again. "From now on, don't call me Dad if everything you've done was meant to erase me." Michael's eyes filled with tears. Vanessa looked like stone pale and broken. The inspector stepped forward gently. "Mr. Aldrich, we'll need your statement to confirm you did not authorize any rentals." I nodded, eyes still locked on my son and daughter-in-law. "I never authorized any rental activity in this home." Then turning to Vanessa, "Not one." HOA rep added, "Since you're here and confirming your ownership, the HOA will open a formal investigation immediately. This may result in substantial penalties." I answered only one word: "Good." The inspector added, "We'll be filing for violations involving unlicensed rentals, fire safety breaches, and consumer fraud." I looked at Vanessa one last time. "I don't need your apology. I need the truth." My voice was cold as the snow outside. Then I turned away, climbed the stairs, and left them standing in the wreckage they created. No yelling, no drama. I didn't need any of that. Because the moment I stepped back into that house, they learned something they had ignored for an entire month. I hadn't disappeared. I wasn't weak, and I was not their victim. There are days you never forget. Not because they're beautiful, but because they're the day you finally stand up and take your life back with your own trembling hands. December 26, 2024 was that day for me. After the explosive inspection that morning, Michael and Vanessa hid in their room the entire afternoon. I heard them whisper, fighting in the hallway, tense and frantic, but I no longer cared. I focused on one thing. I gathered every piece of evidence: the ring videos from Tom, the documents from the backyard shed, the forged emails, the fake cognitive test draft, the Airbnb ledger, the cash intake sheets, and I loaded them into one USB drive. Then I made a phone call. Exactly 3 hours later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Standing on my porch was a tall woman in her early 50s, dark coat, calm eyes, badge clipped to her jacket. Susan Whitford, Adult Protective Services, Senior Investigator, APS. The very agency Michael and Vanessa thought would never be called. She raised her badge. Mr. Aldrich, we received reports of elder exploitation, one from Mr. Henderson and one from you. I need to take your statement immediately. I stepped aside and let her in. She scanned the house quickly. Professional, sharp, the kind of person who can read a room in a single glance. When we sat at the kitchen table, she said, I need to see all the evidence you've collected. I placed the USB on the table. She plugged it in. Opened file after file, videos, emails, spreadsheets, documents. She didn't interrupt. She didn't comment. She just took notes, precise, quiet, experienced. After nearly 20 minutes of heavy silence, she finally looked up. Mr. Aldrich, what you've given me isn't just civil misconduct. This is evidence of felony-level elder exploitation. My heartbeat slowed, not from fear, but from the relief of finally being seen. Susan stood. Please call Michael and Vanessa downstairs. I walked to the stairs. Michael, Vanessa, down here, now. There was no anger in my voice, only emptiness, and that scared them more than shouting ever could. They walked down slowly, pale, eyes swollen. Michael looked like he'd been crying. When he saw Susan, he froze. APS. Why is APS here? Susan held up her badge. I'm here to investigate allegations that you may have engaged in financial exploitation and cognitive manipulation of Mr. Aldrich. Vanessa stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. What? No, we were just trying to help, Susan said sharply. And do not interrupt again. Michael collapsed into a chair like someone awaiting a sentence. Vanessa sat beside him, hands shaking violently. Susan opened one of the videos, the footage of Vanessa opening the back door and taking cash from a guest. Then she played the audio clip Stephen recorded. Vanessa saying, if he moves to assisted living, this house will sell for a great price. Vanessa broke. She covered her face and sobbed. No. It wasn't like that. I just wanted what Susan asked quietly. I wanted financial stability, using your father-in-law's assets, Susan replied without raising her voice. Michael's shoulders shook. He buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I messed up. I messed everything up. I looked at him. My son, a man I raised, a man I loved, a man who tried to erase me. Michael, I said you planned to take me for a cognitive exam on December 27th, didn't you? He nodded slowly, crying harder. Dad? Vanessa said it was just a checkup, to make sure you were okay. I slammed my hand on the table. For the first time in weeks, I let myself be angry. Don't lie to me. You knew exactly what that test was for. You knew guardianship would take everything from me. You knew the house transfer deadline was December 31st. Michael sobbed so hard he could barely breathe. Dad, I was drowning. I was in debt. I thought if we sold the house I stood, you had every chance to ask for help. But you chose to erase your own father instead. Vanessa tried to rise, but Susan stopped her. Sit. I still have one more question. She opened the folder labeled Medical Cognitive Evaluation. This draft, Susan asked who wrote it. Vanessa's lips trembled. I copied a template, but I didn't submit it. But you scheduled the real test, Susan said. You contacted the doctor, and you prepared a guardianship petition. Vanessa could no longer speak. Her sobs broke into silent gasps. Susan closed her laptop and stood. Mr. Aldrich, under APS authority, I will be filing for an immediate protective order on all your assets. From this moment forward, no one may transfer, sell, rent, or restructure your property or accounts without APS and court approval. I nodded slowly. Thank you. Susan turned to Michael and Vanessa. You are prohibited from accessing Mr. Aldrich's financial accounts, medical records, or any personal information. Further attempts could result in felony charges. Vanessa collapsed into her hands. Please, please don't let us go to jail. Susan's voice softened, not kind but practiced. Jail isn't my decision, but everything you said here tonight will be included in the report. Michael looked at me, eyes red, pleading. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I stared at him for a long moment. No rage, no pity, no grief, just emptiness. Michael, I said quietly, I gave you 37 years to be a good man. He broke. Vanessa whispered through tears, Please, let us stay here a few more days. We have nowhere. I clenched my fist, but my voice stayed cold and steady. No. You will leave this house by December 28th. Vanessa snapped her head up. In 2 days? No, we can't. Yes, I said. You have 36 hours. I've been pushed out of my home long enough. Now it's your turn. The kitchen fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Susan rose, writing on her clipboard. The protective order will be active tonight, Mr. Aldrich. I'll return tomorrow morning. She paused, looked at me, and lowered her voice. You did the right thing. You stood up at exactly the right moment. I nodded, though I felt no victory. Just the beginning of a long, unwanted war. When Susan left and the door closed, I looked at Michael and Vanessa, one crying because they were caught, the other crying because their plan collapsed. But their tears no longer moved me. I said one final sentence, the last sentence of that night, December 28th. Be gone. Then I walked upstairs, shut Mary's door, and sat alone in the quiet. Not a painful quiet. Not anymore. A quiet that belonged to a man finally taking his life back. December 11th, 2025. A year passes faster than you expect. Some years slip by quietly, and some leave cracks across your memory the way winter ice fractures under pressure. 2024 was that kind of year. And today, December 11th, 2025, I'm sitting in the room that once hurt me the most, realizing I've finally taken everything back. Mary's old office is nothing like it used to be. No more rifled boxes, no more unfamiliar fingerprints on the desk she polished every morning. I've turned it into a small art studio, now a place where I paint memories. Not to cling to the past, but to accept that the things we survive never disappear. They simply change shape. The morning light falls across the wooden shelf where I keep the one Christmas ornament of Mary's that Vanessa never managed to clear out for staging. I touch it gently. A thin fracture runs along its side, but it's still whole. Just like me. Life after December 26th wasn't easy, but it was clear. APS pushed harder than I ever imagined. Susan called almost every week during the first 3 months of the year. Then in April, she told me the guardianship petition has been denied entirely, and the record will remain on file to protect you from any future attempts. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. The kind of exhale you make after setting down a backpack you've carried for far too many miles. Sometimes freedom isn't something you earn. Sometimes it's something you take back. Vanessa. She lost her real estate license in May. Ethics violations, client fraud, illegal rentals on a property she didn't own. Last I heard, she's living with her sister in Greeley selling insurance part-time. No silk dresses, no designer heels, no cold smile like the one she wore the last months of 2024. And Michael, he moved into a one-bedroom apartment near Prospect Road. He works part-time at a hardware store. I don't hate him. I'm simply no longer obligated to open the door the way he wants me to. He called a few times. I answered. I was polite. But I kept distance, not to punish him, but to protect myself. And the house. The house is mine again. APS ordered new locks, a new security system, a full inspection of the back door, and sealed every pathway Vanessa used to sneak into my room at 2 a.m. City code enforcement fined the property heavily, and I didn't mind. It was the price of purging the last remains of the manipulation that once lived under my roof. I repainted the walls, cleaned out every trace Vanessa left behind, even the faint scent of her perfume on the sofa. I wanted this home not only to be safe, but to be clean of the people who tried to take it. Now when I walk down the hallway, I no longer feel someone following behind me. No more doors opening at 2 a.m. No unfamiliar footsteps, no strange men stepping out of my bedroom. A house is like a person. To heal, you have to get the sickness out first. Tom Henderson. The only neighbor I trust with my life still comes over every Friday afternoon. Coffee, old police stories, and a kind of laughter I hadn't heard in years. Tonight he brought a small box. "Here," Tom said, gently setting it on my studio table. I opened it. Inside was a hand-carved wooden Christmas ornament, 2 hands holding up a house. "I know Mary's ornament means a lot to you," Tom said softly. "This house is still standing, and so are you." I couldn't speak. I just laid my hand on his shoulder. People say neighbors aren't family. They're wrong. Family is the people who show up when your own son is trying to put you in assisted living, but the man next door is the one who stands up to protect you. Tonight, Tom and I lit the fireplace in the living room, our small tradition now. He poured us each a bit of whiskey. Then he asked Stephen, "Do you think you're ready for Christmas this year?" I looked at the fire. The warm light flickered across Mary's ornament. "No," I said softly, "but I'm learning not to be afraid of it." Tom nodded, stirring the fire. "You made it through something most people never recover from," he said. "You didn't just survive. You held on to yourself." I smiled, a small, honest smile that didn't carry bitterness anymore. Now, sitting in my studio writing these words, I finally understand something. If last Christmas was darkness, this Christmas is light. Not the lights of a tree, but the light of truth. I lost many things, but I gained back the thing that matters most. My freedom, my voice, and my home in every sacred sense of the word. Outside the window, snow is falling softly. No strange cars, no Airbnb guests dragging suitcases through my hallway. Just a quiet Colorado evening with the smell of burning pine and the wind brushing the roof I've lived under for over 30 years. I whisper Mary's name like a blessing. This Christmas, I came back. I breathe in deeply, look straight into the camera, and speak the final truth of this story. Sometimes what you see at Christmas isn't light, it's truth. And truth is what finally frees you. Before I close this chapter, I want to say one last thing. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you even a little, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Like, share, and subscribe, so we can meet again in the next story. This Christmas, I wish you peace, the kind of peace it took me a full year to find.